Welcome to Off the Hook. On today's episode, we're going to visit a My Little Pony collection, we're going to discuss games with Across the Board, and we're going to look at some do-it-yourself tabletop terrain. There's lots to see and do, so let's get started. We're here with My Little Pony collector Kyle to talk about My Little Pony and get a little history. Hi Kyle, how's it going?
Hi.
Maybe you can take us through a little history, a little background.
Well, I mean, the toy line started in the 80s, as you know. It wasn't until the current generation that it really picked up and took off in terms of who the demographic targeted, in terms of the demographic. In this case, it was 18 to 36-year-old males, colloquially known as bronies. The show took off a mind of its own. It was developed by Lauren Faust, who is known for Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab.
So how did you get into the fandom?
Well, it's a pretty funny story, actually. I read a lot of webcomics, and I noticed that every other webcomic I was reading happened to address My Little Pony in some way, and I was going, what the heck's going on here, right? So, being a normally non-judgmental person, I decided to check out the show. And I found something there that helped me deal with the stress of everyday life. And through that, I started collecting merchandise just because it was, a pleasant reminder of the show that I enjoy so much.
Great, great. Well, you've got a lot of stuff around here. Maybe you can take us through some of your collection.
Like the two items that really I would bring to attention are this wristband, which was actually only available at a certain convention. It was signed by the lead voice actress, and it was only given out to people who are part of the military. Yeah, so military service, they call them bronies. But yeah, military service bronies, where they held a private meetup with the lead voice actress, and she handed these out to each of them. And I actually obtained one because I happen to know a guy. So I got lucky. When I went to my convention, I brought my copy of the episode guide from the series, and I got it signed by 6 different people. So several of the lead voice actors, one of the supporting role actors, some of the artists who worked on the show.
What are some of your favorite My Little Pony figures?
Figures, I don't really have a preference, but like for characters, I collect like a lot of Twilight memorabilia. The banks, the coffee mug, the 2 stand-up human figures. Like I can point out Twilight in just about every corner of the room here.
So what is Twilight?
Twilight's the, I guess you could call him the head of what's called the main 6. They're the main group of ponies in the show.
So it's a huge community. What's it like to go to some of the conventions?
Well, I've only been to one convention, but I can tell you that there's a lot of singing, actually. In this show, there's show tunes, right? There's a lot of them.
Look here, our 3 little ponies, ready to sing for this crowd. Listen up, 'cause here's our story. I'm gonna sing it very loud.
Nice.
And they're quite popular, quite a few of them. And so occasionally someone will just break out in song and the rest of them will start singing. There was live bands who performed songs from the show and personal pieces that related to the show.
Nice.
Which is kind of unique to a convention scene, especially for such a small pop culture sublet.
Yeah, you see it in some movies. Rocky Horror would throw toast at the toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So what do people do at the convention?
Besides the little concerts that go on, there's merchandise, lots of merchandise. Artists bring their own personal stuff that they made to the tables. There's official merchandise as well. Showings. meetups with the voice actors, signing sessions, the convention usuals, but on top of that, definitely.
Yeah, and you've brought stuff in to get signed as well?
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely negativity in terms of associating with a brand marketed for little girls. And a lot of people identify us as gay or trans or sexually confused, and that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of people in this community that are like that, but this is more about highlighting the softer side of men in general, and not just for men either, like women too enjoy the show.
And the LGBT community finds some comfort in the
There is some
community as
comfort
well?
in there. There's definitely acceptance spread throughout.
The show's been out for quite a while. What do you love about it?
Well, when the show originally started, each episode ended with a life lesson for Twilight to share with others and write about to the princess. Those lessons actually really apply to mental health and actually come with some pretty good coping mechanisms, as well as recognizing how people think when they're dealing with you. And which is a big thing because it's not very commonly addressed, especially in a children's show.
Really, this really is a community that's a lot deeper than people give it credit.
Yeah, I mean, it started off as like anything else, but it started with more depth to it, definitely, for sure.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you for welcoming me into your house.
One of my favorite games here at Across the Board is a game called Takenoko. It is created by Antoine Bowser. It plays 2 to 4 people, ages 13 and up. After a long feud between China and Japan, the Chinese emperor gave a panda bear as a gift to the Japanese emperor. It is our job to make the panda bear happy and to maintain the garden that he's living in. The goal of the game is to collect victory points. Victory points are represented by these different cards. On your turn, you can choose 2 out of 5 actions, which either mean you can add a tile to the playing board, or you can get the gardener to grow the bamboo, or you can get the panda to eat the bamboo, or you can get a new card. The cards show you little set pictures of different conditions. Colors of the tiles, the pieces the panda bear has eaten in its belly, or the height of certain bamboos. If during your turn any of these conditions are fulfilled, you place the card in front of you and you now get the victory points written on them. If somebody plays 8 cards or more, the game ends. Whoever has the most victory points wins. Very simple game, tons of fun. So come on down to Across the Board and check it out. And if you're lucky, we'll let you play with our giant version of Takenoko, because we all know bigger is better. See you around.
In this segment, we're going to be looking at terrain building. When you first get started in tabletop, terrain can be expensive. A building like this can run you about $40. But for $40 worth of household materials, glues, paint, foam core, you can make an entire table worth of stuff. So we're going to get started. I'll show you what I've got. It's easy to get started making your own terrain. Some stuff that's really useful actually are aquarium plants from the local pet store. They are generally heavier plastic, plus they've got wires in them, so they're not going to get too damaged. You just mount them on MDF, which you can pick up at any hardware store. And these make great pieces of terrain. Just around the house, you'd be surprised what you can find. These are old printer cartridges that we just glued down and painted. Something that's very versatile is rigid insulation. From any construction site, Home Depot, your dad's basement probably has some. But this stuff you can use for all sorts of things. We used it for carving different pieces and stuff like that as well, but it's great for walls and hills and stuff like that. Today we're going to focus on making some alien terrain, starting with like these guys made out of pop bottles and foam core. In order to get started, we're going to start with some foam core and cut our base out. The base is very simple, just what you're gluing all your stuff down to. So I'm going to get started. the magic of it. Foam core is great for this. It's great for making buildings. It's fairly rigid. One of the best parts about it is that it's paper. You can just use regular glue to glue stuff down. In this case, even plastics. Just gonna clean up this corner here too. Foam core is easy to find. Michael's, Artist Emporium, art supply stores, places like that will always have it. Okay, so first thing we need to make our alien terrain, actually, are pop bottles. Some varying sizes actually help really well. So what you do is take your label off. Take your label off. To cut the top part of the bottle off here. Try to be smooth about the cut. Good sharp blade helps. Now because we're using knives and later fire, always best to have adult supervision around when you're doing this. If you're kids and doing it. So I'm also going to cut the top off of this. How many unsafe things can you point out? Okay, I'm actually going to do the bottom part of this bottle as well, actually. Okay, and we have our bits. Okay, so now we've got everything cut and we're ready to put a little bit of the work into it. We are going to be using fire to do this. So one thing that's always important, having a big pot of water, just in case. So I'm just going to put this over here. Again, safety first. In order to get this organic look from the plastics, actually, we melt the edges of the plastic, and it naturally curls back, and that's what kind of gives it that organic look. So you take your lighter, again, parent supervision if you're young, and all you got to do is just get it close. Don't have to, barely even have to touch it. We're just running along the edge. Now you got to be careful because it is fire, it is plastic, and things can just up and combust on you. But you just keep doing it until the edges get all smooth. The more you do it, the more it'll misshape a little bit. There you go. Put that one down. And actually, just to give a little more detail, I am going to just slice the tops of these off in the worst fashion possible. Same thing here, you cut out your edges and then just touch them with a bit of flame. Curl back, give it a much more organic look. Okay. Now, next, we have these little spouts here that Again, you can just use Slurpee straws. The ones with the spoons on the end actually work pretty good because they already have kind of a lily look to them. So I just cut those off back here. I like to make them some different lengths too. Okay, and the same thing. I take these, bend them a little bit first, get it started. But again, touch the flame to them, and they start to curl back. And that's what you end up getting. Then we're going to start gluing pieces down. We'll just using regular Elmer's glue. It's true that we are using paper on plastic, but when the wood glue dries, it does kind of create like a shell that helps hold it in place. So all you gotta do is start gooping it on. I actually like to go back and put a couple of coats on, find out when it's drying. I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. One thing I like to do at this point too is just to help the sand or help the glue kind of stay in place around the plastic, I tend to just add a little bit of sand, and it kind of creates like a more like a stiff paste that glues. When the glue dries, it's a little harder, has a little more form to it. Just knock the extra sand off. And then just gonna put a little more on. Okay, I have my first spore kind of glued down and ready to go. I want to add some of the details, so I'm going to add some of these spouts to it. I'm just going to take a little bit of crazy glue, add it to the side, and just stick it to the side like that. Didn't set myself on fire or glue my fingers together even once. So from here, after everything is dried, you would start the painting process. You could spray coat it, you could paint it with acrylics, but either way, just get the paint on. A good dark primer, actually, a black spray primer or a red spray primer, depending on what color you want to use. One thing that we did here was take some little detail pieces from different models and just added them as accent pieces. Used green stuff to make the veins on the side. Just a little bit more detail. And we're back. Pieces primed, priming weather. We're ready to go on to some other things while this dries, so I'm just going to put that there. One thing that we'll do is we'll finish basing this piece. So very simple, just coat the whole thing with glue. Take a piece left over and just spread it around. do is just start putting sand down. You can get it on the street this time of year. Although there are issues about using street sand. It tends to be full of bacteria, tends to have mold after a while. So if you are using sand off the street, boil it first. Nobody thinks twice about it until they open up their case and it's full of mold. Actually, a really good stuff actually is sandblasting sand if you can find it. But Michael's, again, art supply stores will have different kinds. Usually aquarium gravel actually is a really good choice as well. It's already kind of crystalline and stuff like that. So I left a blank spot here. I'm just going to push this guy right down into that spot. And then I'm going to put a little glue on him too to keep him in place. Okay, again, that all needs to dry and then can be painted. This whole thing, in fact, after it's dried, after the sand is dried, after the glue is dried, after the paint is dried, I'm just going to hit it one more time with the primer, and then start painting from there. Okay, so as we jump along here, we're just going to show you how to quickly put some of the paint on. Very simple. Just take some of your acrylics. Take a bunch. I still like the back of my hand as my favorite palette. And one thing you can do is, and hold it from the bottom, I can just quickly just sort of dry brush. Actually, this is more of an overbrush, but it will only put paint on these quick light strokes like that. We'll only really cover the more highlighted part of the, get up around that edge that we melted down. And the more you do it, the more paint you put on, the lighter it gets. That's the paint off the back of my hand. So we put our first coat on, we get it nice and covered. I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a slightly lighter red, put that on as well. Again, back of my hand. This being the second coat, the lighter coat, I'm not going to put it on as heavy. I'm just going to put it on over some raised areas, that lip. So keep going around the edges, make them pop a little bit more. Go down. Again, not as sweeping coverage as you did before, but just a bit, just for highlights. You can see the difference between the two, before and after I did the highlights in the last one. Get the top there as well. Just over the more raised areas. You can always use your finger if you put too much on there. Go back and some few last highlights over the piece, and then we're ready to add it back to our main piece there. So place. Normally we would glue it down, but we'll do that later. Okay, so here we have the basics of getting a piece of terrain together and on the table, cutting, priming, and getting it painted. With a little bit of extra work, it's easy to make it look like one of these two finished pieces and ready to go on your table. Everything we used you can find just around the house or at your local art supply store. You're really only limited by your imagination.
The German Game of the Year award, or also called Spiel des Jahres winner of 2015, is a game called Cold Express. Cold Express has been designed by Christopher Rambaud and plays from 2 to 6 people. In this game, we each take the role of a robber that is trying to rob an old Western-themed train. The money that you're trying to get is represented by small tokens that are spread around the train, either as money bags or as diamonds. The game will be played in 5 rounds, each round being divided into smaller individual turns. On their turn, each player chooses one of their 6 action cards from their hand and places it face up on the table. The other players now follow in order, placing one of their actions on top of the previously played cards. After all the turns are over, we take the whole stack of cards from the middle of the table, flip it around, and act out every action in sequential order as it was played. The actions could be as simple as walking down the train, climbing up or down the train, maybe punching somebody if they're standing on the same space, which makes them drop their loot. You can also try to shoot people by giving them one of your bullet cards that they add to their deck later on, which makes their choices limited in the future. After 5 rounds, whoever has the most money will be declared the hero of the Old West. Cold Express is a beautifully designed game with a gorgeous 3D train that will be in the middle of the table, which always creates a little bit of an awe effect if it gets played here across the board. So come on by, check it out!